Don't play classy with me. People like you don't belong throwing weddings on this street." The woman smiled as she tipped the glass, red wine spilling down the bride's white dress, soaking lace and skin, while cameras sucked in the moment. "Oops," she said lightly. "Guess you should have known better." The bride didn't flinch. She felt her groom tense beside her as the woman lifted her phone. "Bring your badge and shut this mess down. Now!" A patrol car screamed to a stop. The officer grabbed the groom, yanking his arms back, metal cuffs biting into the crisp white sleeves beneath his black suit. Resisting already? The bride stayed silent, breathing even. None of them knew what they were really arresting. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you can't miss. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the backyard as Naomi Brooks stood before a vintage mirror propped against the garden trellis. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her ivory veil, smoothing the delicate lace that had belonged to her grandmother. The intimate gathering of 40 guests created a warm buzz of conversation around her. Elias Brooks, tall and dignified in his charcoal suit, moved among their friends and family with quiet grace. His deep voice carried notes of joy as he thanked people for coming. The string lights overhead swayed gently in the breeze, not yet lit, but ready for when dusk would settle. Near the dessert table, Mrs. Laverne Hill's rich alto voice lifted in gentle worship. "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound," she hummed, arranging buttercream roses on pristine china plates. Her silver hair caught the light as she swayed, her turquoise dress matching the garden hydrangeas. "You look absolutely beautiful, baby." Mrs. Hill called to Naomi, her eyes twinkling. "Your mama would have been so proud to see this day." Naomi's throat tightened with emotion as she smoothed her hands over the ivory silk. The dress had taken months to find. Classic lines, elegant beading, and a subtle train that whispered across the grass. Perfect for their intimate backyard ceremony. The officiant, Reverend Marcus, stepped forward and cleared his throat. "If everyone could gather, we're ready to begin." Guests moved toward the rows of white chairs, a soft murmur of anticipation rising. The side gate crashed open with a bang that made several people jump. Karen Whitlock burst through, her phone held high and recording, her face twisted in manufactured outrage. "What do you people think you're doing?" she shrieked, stalking across the lawn in her designer heels. "This is a residential neighborhood, not some party venue." Phones emerged from pockets and purses as guests began recording her entrance. Karen's eyes darted around wildly, taking in the decorations, the gathered crowd, the wedding arch draped in white roses. "You need permits for this kind of gathering," she spat, her voice rising higher. "Do you have any idea what this does to property values? Having all these cars parked everywhere?" Naomi stood perfectly still, her hands clasped together to keep them from shaking, not with fear, but with controlled anger. Karen advanced until she was uncomfortably close, her floral perfume cloying in the warm air. "Mrs. Whitlock," Elias said calmly, "this is a private celebration on private property. Please leave our wedding in peace." Karen's lips curved in a cold smile that never reached her eyes. She lifted her arm, red wine sloshing in the crystal glass she carried. "Oh, is this your special day?" The false sweetness in her voice dripped like poison. "So sorry to spoil it." With deliberate slowness, she tipped the glass. Dark red wine cascaded down the front of Naomi's wedding dress, spattering the ivory silk with crimson stains. The scent of Cabernet filled the air as the liquid soaked into the beaded bodice and spilled onto the roses in Naomi's bouquet. A collective gasp rose from the guests. Mrs. Hill took a step forward, fury evident in her stance, but Naomi raised one hand slightly, a silent request for restraint. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, drawing in a slow, measured breath through her nose. When she opened them again, Her gaze was steady and unflinching. She would not give Karen the satisfaction of tears or rage. "That's assault," someone in the crowd called out. "We've got it all on video." Karen's hand shook slightly as she pulled out her phone, but her voice remained triumphant as she hit speed dial and put it on speaker. "Brent, you need to come handle this situation right now. They're having some kind of illegal gathering, blocking the whole street with cars. I don't feel safe." Officer Brent Whitlock's voice crackled through the speaker. "On my way, honey. Don't engage with them anymore." The sound of a police radio squawked in the background. "These people need to learn they can't just do whatever they want in our neighborhood," Karen announced to the watching crowd. She began filming again, panning across the gathered faces. "This is harassment. This is disturbing the peace. My husband will shut this whole thing down." Elias moved to stand beside Naomi, his hand finding hers. "Stay calm," he murmured, voice pitched for her ears alone. "Let her show the neighborhood who she is." Mrs. Hill stepped forward, her dignity a sharp contrast to Karen's theatrical display. "I've lived on this street for 40 years, child. The only person disturbing any peace here is you." Karen's nostrils flared. "No one asked for your opinion. You're probably part of this whole invasion." She gestured dismissively at the gathering. In the distance, sirens began to wail, growing steadily louder. Karen's stance shifted, her shoulders squaring with satisfaction as she stared at the wine stains spreading across Naomi's dress. She folded her arms across her chest, a smug smile playing at her lips. The red and blue lights weren't visible yet, but their approach was unmistakable. Several guests moved protectively closer to Naomi and Elias, phones still recording. The warm afternoon air grew thick with tension. Mrs. Hill's hymn had long since fallen silent, replaced by the rising wail of police sirens. The string lights swayed overhead, casting shifting shadows across Karen's face as she stood her ground, watching the wine drip from Naomi's ruined dress onto the manicured grass below. The screech of tires on asphalt cut through the tense silence. Officer Brent Whitlock's patrol car lurched to a stop at the curb, followed closely by 2 more police vehicles. Karen's face lit up with vindictive glee as she marched toward her husband, pointing at the wedding gathering like a general directing troops. "There they are," she announced loudly. "All of them. They're refusing to disperse." Brent emerged from his car, adjusting his utility belt with practiced authority. His jaw was set in a hard line as he surveyed the scene, taking in the wedding arch, the scattered chairs, and the wine-stained bride. The 2 backup officers flanked him, hands resting near their weapons. "Break it up!" Brent bellowed, shoving his way through the cluster of guests. People stumbled aside, phones still recording. "This is an unlawful gathering. Everyone needs to clear out now." "Unlawful?" Mrs. Hill's voice rang with indignation. "This is a wedding, Officer Whitlock. You know full well there's nothing unlawful here." Brent's face reddened. "I need to see IDs from everyone, now. Anyone who can't produce identification will be detained for questioning." He strode directly to Elias, invading his personal space until they were nearly chest to chest. Despite his height advantage, Elias remained carefully still, hands visible at his sides. The tension crackled between them like static before a storm. "Sir," Elias said evenly, "this is private property. We have every right to—" "Don't tell me about rights," Brent snapped. "You're creating a public disturbance. Your vehicles are blocking emergency access. This ends now." Mrs. Hill stepped forward, her turquoise dress rustling as she moved between them. "Now you listen here, Brent Whitlock. I've known you since you were running around in diapers. Your mama would be ashamed to see you acting this way at a wedding." Brent's face twisted. Without warning, he shoved Mrs. Hill's shoulder hard. The elderly woman lost her balance, stumbling backward until she collapsed into one of the white chairs. The chair skidded several inches across the grass from the force of her fall. Gasps and shouts erupted from the guests. The sea of phones rose higher, capturing every second. Mrs. Hill's hand pressed against her chest as she tried to catch her breath. Elias moved instinctively to help her, reaching out with one hand. In a blur of motion, Brent grabbed his arm and wrenched it behind his back. "Stop resisting!" Brent shouted, though Elias wasn't fighting back. He slammed the taller man face first against the wooden fence, the impact making the panels rattle. The handcuffs came out with a metallic click. "He's not resisting!" Naomi's voice carried above the chaos, steady despite the rage burning in her chest. Her training screamed at her to intervene, but she forced herself to stay in character. One wrong move could blow their entire operation. Karen sidled up next to Naomi, close enough to whisper, "This is my street. You people need to learn your place." The younger officer, Miguel Reyes, watched the scene unfold with growing dismay. His hand fidgeted with his badge as Brent roughly patted down Elias, making a show of checking for weapons. "Sir," Reyes called out, "maybe we should take a step back here. De-escalate the situation." "Stay in your lane, rookie," Brent growled. He yanked Elias away from the fence, keeping a punishing grip on his arm. "Anyone else want to interfere with police business? We've got room for all of you at the station." The guests huddled closer together, phones still recording but fear evident on their faces. Mrs. Hill had managed to stand again, supported by two young men from the wedding party. Her eyes blazed with righteous anger. "The only criminal here is you," she declared, voice shaking but clear. "That's it," Brent shouted. "Everyone's getting cited for disturbing the peace. Rodriguez, start taking names. Anyone who resists gets cuffed." Officer Reyes moved through the crowd, but instead of following Brent's orders, he made his way to Naomi. His expression was troubled as he glanced over his shoulder to ensure Brent was occupied with roughly searching Elias's pockets. "Ma'am," he murmured, barely moving his lips, "you need to move this inside. Right now. I'll make sure he gets released, but you have to clear out before this gets worse." Naomi studied his face, noting the sincerity in his eyes and the slight tremor in his hands. Here was someone else who understood what justice should look like. The backup officers looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight and exchanging uncertain glances. They'd clearly been called for a major disturbance, but had found only a wedding celebration destroyed by prejudice and abuse of power. Mrs. Hill was still catching her breath, one hand pressed to her shoulder where Brent had shoved her. The chairs lay scattered from people jumping back when Brent had attacked Elias. The wedding arch swayed slightly in the breeze, white roses speckled with drops of red wine that had sprayed when Karen had doused Naomi. Through it all, Karen stood with her phone raised, a satisfied smile playing across her lips as she recorded the destruction of their special day. She zoomed in on Naomi's stained dress, then panned to Elias in handcuffs, creating her own twisted documentation of what she surely saw as a victory. Officer Reyes touched Naomi's elbow gently, urgency in his voice. "Please, get everyone inside, now, before he starts loading people into cruisers." Inside the community hall, the fluorescent lights sputtered to life with a mechanical hum. Guests filed in quickly, their formal wear oddly stark against the plain cement walls and linoleum floors. Naomi watched through the window as Officer Miguel Reyes sat in his cruiser across the street, engine idling. His presence felt like a fragile shield against whatever might come next. Elias pressed a bag of frozen peas against his jaw where it had hit the fence. A bruise was already blooming along his cheekbone, and his wrists bore angry red marks from the handcuffs. Yet his eyes followed Naomi with steady concern as she moved through the hall, directing people to set up folding tables and arrange what remained of their wedding decorations. "The backup dress is in my car," Mrs. Hill said softly, touching Naomi's arm. "Let's get you changed, child." In the makeshift bridal room, really just the community center's office, Naomi stared at her reflection in a small wall mirror. The wine had soaked through the ivory fabric, leaving ugly crimson splotches across the bodice and skirt. Her fingers trembled as she carefully removed the ruined dress. Mrs. Hill helped her into the backup, a simple white sheath dress they'd bought just in case. It wasn't the dream gown she'd planned to marry in, but Naomi lifted her chin as Mrs. Hill zipped it up. She refused to let Karen see her cry. Refused to give that woman the satisfaction of knowing she'd wounded them. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Hill declared, adjusting Naomi's veil. "And twice as strong." When Naomi emerged, Elias was waiting. The guests had done their best with the stark room, arranging chairs in neat rows and stringing up the fairy lights they'd salvaged from the backyard. Someone had even managed to save a few flower arrangements. "I'm so sorry," Elias began, his voice rough. "This isn't what you deserved. I should have—" "Stop." Naomi took his hands in hers. "They don't get our joy. Not one piece of it." The officiant, a family friend who'd stayed despite everything, stepped forward. "Shall we begin again?" This ceremony was shorter than planned, stripped of readings and music. But when Naomi and Elias spoke their vows, their voices rang clear and unwavering through the community hall. Their words carried even more weight now, promises of love and loyalty tested mere hours after being made. "For better or worse," Elias said, sliding the ring onto Naomi's finger. "In all battles," Naomi added as she placed his ring, a slight deviation from the traditional words that made several guests nod in understanding. Mrs. Hill was the first to applaud when they were pronounced husband and wife. Though her voice shook, her amen echoed off the walls with fierce pride. The other guests joined in, their celebration carrying a defiant edge, joy as resistance. For one precious hour, hope filled the community hall. Someone found an old CD player, and music drifted through the room. The cake, though slightly squashed from its hasty transport, was cut and shared. Elias and Naomi swayed together in their first dance, her head resting against his chest, where his heart beat steady and strong. "We did it," she whispered. "We did," he agreed, though something in his tone suggested he wasn't just talking about the wedding. As dusk settled outside, painting the windows in deep purple, Elias stepped out to check their car. The parking lot was quiet, empty except for their vehicle and a few guests' cars. The sound of his sharp intake of breath brought Naomi to the door. All four tires lay flat, jagged cuts visible in the rubber. But it was the hood that made Naomi's blood run cold. Deep scratches carved into the paint spelled out a single word: leave. The metal had been gouged with something sharp, a knife or keys, with enough force to ensure the message couldn't be easily buffed away. The streetlights cast harsh shadows in each letter, making them look like open wounds in the car's surface. A police cruiser rolled past slowly. Through the windshield, they could see Officer Miguel Reyes. His face was drawn with conflict as he met their eyes, but he didn't stop. His brake lights flared briefly at the corner before he turned and disappeared. Naomi stepped forward, placing her palm flat against the carved letters. The metal felt cool under her hand, the edges of the scratches sharp against her skin. She could feel Elias watching her, waiting. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "It's starting." Around them, crickets began their evening song. A door slammed somewhere in the distance. The day's heat lingered in the asphalt, rising up around them like a reminder of everything that had burned away in the past few hours. Their wedding day had become something else entirely. Not an ending, but an opening salvo in a war they'd been preparing for longer than Karen or Officer Whitlock could possibly know. Mrs. Hill appeared in the doorway behind them, phone in hand as she documented the damage. Her earlier joy had hardened into something more resolute. "I've got pictures of everything," she announced. Every single thing. The remaining guests gathered at the entrance, murmuring in anger as they saw the vandalism. Someone offered to call a tow truck. Another volunteered to drive them home. The community rallied around them, but Naomi barely heard their offers of help. Her focus remained on the crude warning carved into their car, a message that would prove to be its sender's biggest mistake. Naomi stood at the community hall's industrial sink, scrubbing frantically at the wine stain on her wedding dress. The harsh overhead lights made the red splotches look like blood against the ivory fabric. Her fingers were raw from working at the delicate material, but she couldn't stop. Each stroke of soap felt like fighting back against Karen's smug smile. Through the window she could see Elias methodically photographing their vandalized car. He moved with careful precision, documenting every slash in the tires, every gouged letter on the hood. His phone clicked steadily as he captured multiple angles, his face set in the concentrated expression she recognized from countless investigations. The silence broke with a sharp ring from Naomi's phone. Mrs. Hill's name flashed on the screen. "Honey?" Mrs. Hill's voice trembled slightly. "There's a patrol car that's been circling my house for the last 20 minutes. Just driving by, real slow, over and over." Naomi's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Are you inside?" "On my porch. I'm not hiding in my own home." Despite the steel in her words, Mrs. Hill's breathing sounded shallow. "That woman, Karen, she was out there earlier, pointing at my house while she talked on her phone. Now this car keeps coming around." "Lock your doors," Naomi said, already drying her hands. "We're filing a report right now. This is harassment." "Baby, you know they won't." "They have to take the report," Naomi cut in, though they both knew better. "We're documenting everything. Stay inside, Mrs. Hill, please." Elias looked up as Naomi burst out of the community hall, the wet wedding dress forgotten in the sink. One look at her face, and he nodded, falling into step beside her as she explained Mrs. Hill's call. They took his brother's borrowed car, since theirs was undrivable, and headed for the police station. The fluorescent lights inside the station buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow across the empty lobby. It was late evening now, the desk staffed by a single bored-looking officer who barely glanced up from his computer. The sound of boot heels on linoleum made Naomi's spine stiffen before she even turned around. Officer Brent Whitlock emerged from a side door, his smile spreading slow and predatory. "Well, well, the happy couple." He planted himself behind the desk, deliberately blocking the other officer. "What seems to be the problem?" "We need to file multiple reports," Naomi said, her voice steady. "Vandalism to our vehicle. Harassment." "Harassment?" Whitlock's eyebrows rose in mock concern. "That's a serious charge. But from what I heard, your unauthorized gathering was disturbing the peace. And my wife tells me your husband here got—" He paused meaningfully. "Aggressive." "That's a lie," Elias said quietly. "And you know it." "Do I?" Whitlock leaned forward. "Because I've got witnesses who say different. Folks who've lived in this neighborhood a long time, not troublemakers who just showed up to cause problems. We're homeowners," Naomi cut in. "We have every right—" "Rights?" Whitlock's smile vanished. "Let me explain something. This is a quiet community. People here look out for each other. They don't appreciate outsiders coming in and disrupting things." The threat hung in the air between them. Naomi placed her phone on the counter, displaying photos of their vandalized car. "We want to file a report." "Sorry." Whitlock's voice dripped false regret. "Can't take a report without evidence of who did it. Maybe if your husband hadn't provoked—" "The report," Naomi insisted. "Now." Whitlock's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice. We wouldn't want another disturbance." They left an hour later with nothing but an incident number scrawled on a scrap of paper. No official report. No investigation promised. The next morning, the retaliation began in earnest. Naomi's office received 3 separate complaints about suspicious activity at her address. The community hall's management called to ban them from future events, citing noise violations and property damage that never occurred. Anonymous tips flooded local business owners about the troublemakers who'd moved in. "I'm going to grab some ice," Elias said, seeing Naomi's hands shaking as she hung up from another apologetic client, calling to cancel their contract. "We're almost out." The corner store was only 2 blocks away, its neon open sign buzzing in the early evening gloom. Elias grabbed a bag of ice, paid quickly, and stepped out into the alley that led to the parking lot. A shadow detached itself from the wall. Officer Whitlock stood blocking the path, his bulk silhouetted against the streetlights beyond. No cameras reached this spot between buildings. They both knew it. The first punch caught Elias in the ribs, driving the air from his lungs. The second snapped his head back, knuckles connecting with precise force to his jaw. Whitlock moved with practiced efficiency, each blow calculated to hurt, without leaving obvious evidence. "You don't belong here," Whitlock hissed, punctuating each word with another strike. "This isn't your neighborhood. This isn't your town." Elias stumbled, but didn't fall. More importantly, he didn't fight back. He kept his hands loose at his sides, absorbing the punishment even as his vision blurred. The bag of ice split open at his feet, cubes scattering across the asphalt. When it was over, Whitlock straightened his uniform and stepped back. "Next time won't be a warning," he said, then walked away as casually as he'd appeared. Elias made it home on unsteady feet. Naomi's face went pale when she saw him, but her hands were gentle as she pressed fresh ice against his swelling cheek. They sat in their kitchen, the lights off, listening to another patrol car cruise slowly past their house. "I could have stopped him," Elias whispered. "I know." Naomi's fingers traced the bruise spreading along his jaw. "But he just gave us exactly what we needed." The darkness pressed against their living room windows as Naomi and Elias sat in silence. Their wedding bouquets drooped in makeshift vases, white petals browning at the edges. The red wine stain on Naomi's dress had set like an angry wound where it hung over a kitchen chair. Neither of them had bothered to turn on more than a single lamp. Elias's bruised face looked worse in the dim light. He shifted, wincing at his sore ribs, and pulled out a phone Naomi had never seen before, sleek, black, with an encryption warning on the startup screen. "Time to stop pretending," he said softly. Naomi nodded, rising to cross the room. She knelt by a floor vent, fingers finding the loose corner. Inside was a slim leather wallet, well worn. Her FBI credentials caught the lamplight as she opened it. "Financial Crimes Division," she said, running her thumb over the badge. 2 years deep on white-collar cases. "You?" "Task Force." Elias's voice was quiet, but steady. "Police corruption and civil rights violations. Been tracking Whitlock for months before we even moved here. I knew you were law enforcement of some kind." Naomi smiled faintly. "The way you handled yourself today, taking those hits without fighting back, collecting evidence instead of reacting." "And you?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "The careful way you documented every interaction? How you made sure witnesses had clear views of Karen's assault? Occupational habit." She settled back beside him on the couch. "Though I didn't expect our wedding to become part of an active investigation. Neither did our handler." Elias checked his secure phone. "She's waiting. We should go." They slipped out the back door, moving carefully through shadows between streetlights. 3 houses down, a dark van sat with its lights off. Naomi rapped twice on the back doors. They opened to reveal Special Agent in Charge Dana Klein. her silver hair gleaming in the glow of multiple monitors. She didn't waste time with greetings. "That's quite a shiner, Brooks," she said, gesturing them inside. "Whitlock's getting bolder." "He's escalating," Elias confirmed, settling onto a metal bench. The beating was calculated. No cameras, no witnesses. He's done this before. Many times. Klein tapped a keyboard, bringing up a thick digital file. Brent Whitlock has a pattern. Complaints buried, convenient body cam malfunctions, witnesses who suddenly go quiet. But he's careful. Never leaves enough evidence for local authorities to act. "And Karen?" Naomi asked. "His wife? She's his trigger." Klein pulled up another screen of data. When she feels threatened or disrespected, she calls him. He responds with increasingly aggressive force. Then she launches social campaigns painting herself as the victim, while he uses his badge to silence anyone who speaks up. "Perfect symbiosis," Elias muttered. "She provides the excuse. He provides the muscle." "But they made a mistake this time." Klein's thin smile held no warmth. "Your wedding incident was caught by multiple devices. Phones, tablets, and that new security camera on the Miller house across the street. The one Whitlock keeps complaining about?" Naomi leaned forward. "The same. It uploads directly to a cloud server." Klein's fingers flew across the keys. "Which we've been mirroring to a secure federal database since it was installed." The footage appeared on screen. Multiple angles of Karen storming through the gate, the wine assault, Brent's arrival, and violence. The images were crystal clear. "If Whitlock realizes there's federal interest," Klein warned, "he'll start destroying evidence. He's got friends in the department who will help cover his tracks." Naomi stood, her hand brushing the fabric of her ruined dress where it showed beneath her coat. "Then we let him try. He'll get sloppy," Elias agreed. "Start making mistakes." "This isn't just about Whitlock anymore," Klein said. "We've got reports of similar patterns in neighboring precincts. Officers using personal conflicts to justify official violence. Complaints vanishing. Witnesses pressured. A network," Naomi breathed. "Using their badges to enforce their own justice. And their families as justification." Elias's jaw tightened. "How many other Karens are out there, crying victim while their husbands crack skulls?" "We need everything documented," Klein said. "Every interaction, every threat, every abuse of power. But you'll have to maintain cover. If they suspect you're feds, they won't." Naomi's voice was steel. "They see what they expect to see. A couple who should be afraid but won't leave, who document everything but can't get justice, who absorb their abuse while building a case they'll never expect. Until it's too late," Elias added softly. Klein handed them each an encrypted comm device. "Check in daily. If you miss a check-in, we extract you immediately. No heroics." They nodded, understanding the stakes. As they prepared to leave, Elias paused to send one final text from his secure phone. "Operation starts at dawn." The message glowed briefly on Klein's monitor before vanishing into encrypted channels. Outside, a patrol car cruised past, Whitlock making his rounds, reminding them they were being watched. But for the first time since the wedding, Naomi felt her lips curve in a genuine smile. Let him watch. Let him think he was in control. Every act of intimidation, every abuse of power, every moment of Karen's theatrical victimhood, it would all become evidence. The stained dress wasn't a mark of shame anymore. It was the first exhibit in a federal case that would tear down not just Whitlock, but every officer who thought a badge made them untouchable. The morning sun barely cleared the horizon as Naomi and Elias left their driveway in separate cars. Naomi checked her rearview mirror, noting the unmarked sedan 3 cars back, Klein's surveillance team keeping watch. She took the long route downtown, making random turns until she was certain no one else followed. The parking lot at City Hall was half empty when she arrived. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she approached the permit's desk. Her heels clicked against the linoleum, echoing in the quiet space. "Good morning?" Naomi smiled at the clerk. "I need to review street permit records for Oak Haven Circle, particularly regarding noise ordinances and public gatherings." The clerk nodded, tapping at her keyboard. "That'll take about 20 minutes to pull up. You can wait by the bulletin board." Naomi adjusted her blazer, feeling the weight of the concealed microphone. She pretended to study posted notices while scanning the room's reflective surfaces. Right on cue, Karen Whitlock materialized from the tax assessor's office, designer purse swinging. "Well, if it isn't the new neighbor." Karen's voice dripped artificial sweetness. She cornered Naomi against the corkboard, blocking the clearest escape route. "Looking for permits? After the fact?" "Just doing my due diligence," Naomi replied evenly, angling her body so the mic could catch everything. Karen stepped closer, perfume overwhelming. Her smile stretched wide, showing too many teeth. "You know, I have connections here. I could make certain paperwork problems disappear." She lowered her voice to a stage whisper. "For the right people, the ones who understand how things work in this neighborhood. Thank you, but I prefer to handle things officially." Naomi kept her tone professional, neutral. Karen's eyes hardened, though her smile never wavered. "That's not very neighborly. I'm trying to help you avoid complications. I appreciate the offer, but I'll wait for the clerk." "Suit yourself." Karen's manicured hand gripped Naomi's arm, squeezing just shy of painful. "But remember, I tried to be nice about this." Across town, Elias parked his sedan in a grocery store lot with clear sightlines to the street. He watched Brent Whitlock's patrol car make its third pass of the morning, noting the timing in a small notebook. The pattern was becoming clear. Regular loops punctuated by unexplained stops behind Mike's auto shop, a business that had been temporarily closed for months. Each time, Whitlock's car idled for exactly 7 minutes. Other patrol vehicles would occasionally join him, officers exchanging quick conversations before dispersing. Elias photographed license plates with a concealed lens, matching times to faces. His phone buzzed, a notification from Karen's social media account. She'd posted a new video, clearly staged in her immaculate kitchen. Tears streaked her expertly applied makeup as she described feeling threatened and unsafe at her own home. "They crashed into our peaceful street," Karen sniffled into the camera. "Had this huge illegal party. When I tried to help them understand the rules, they became aggressive. If my husband hadn't been there to protect me..." The comments section exploded within minutes. Sympathetic followers demanded justice, sharing the video wider. Others began posting the Brooks address, photos of their house, calls for action. The digital mob was forming. Elias was about to send the links to Klein when his phone rang. "Naomi." "I'm on my way home," she said without preamble. The permit records showed interesting patterns. Properties linked to Whitlock's friends get fast-tracked. Others get buried in red tape or denied outright. "Good work. I've got—" A crash from Naomi's end cut him off. "What was that?" "Someone just threw a brick through our front window." Naomi's voice remained steady. "Note attached. Says go home in red marker. I'm on my way." "No. Stay on surveillance. We need those patrol patterns." "I've got this." Elias gripped the steering wheel, forcing himself to remain in position. "Is anyone still there?" Black pickup peeled out. "I got the plate." Papers rustled. "Klein's team is photographing everything." His phone beeped. Another call coming in. Mrs. Hill's number. "Hold on, Naomi. Mrs. Hill is calling." He switched lines. The elderly woman's voice shook. "They're watching my house. 2 men in a police car just sitting there, taking pictures of everyone who visits. writing down license plates. "Stay inside, Mrs. Hill. Document everything. We'll handle this." "I'm not afraid of them," she declared, though her voice cracked. "But be careful. Both of you." Back at their house, Naomi stretched clear plastic sheeting over the broken window, securing it with duct tape. Glass crunched under her shoes as she worked. The brick sat on her kitchen counter, evidence tag already attached by Klein's team. She touched the jagged edge of one window shard, remembering Karen's too-wide smile at City Hall. Elias came home an hour later, his notebook full of surveillance details. He found Naomi at the dining room table, surrounded by permit records and property documents. "They're trying to scare us out," he said, dropping into a chair beside her. "They picked the wrong targets." Naomi spread out another page of records. "We stay. We finish this." She didn't look up from her work, but her hand found his across the table. Their fingers interlocked, wedding bands catching the light filtering through the plastic-covered window. Outside, another patrol car rolled past, slower than necessary. Watching. Waiting. But they weren't the only ones watching anymore. In unmarked vehicles throughout the neighborhood, Klein's teams documented every pass, every threatening gesture, every abuse of power. The evidence mounted piece by piece, building toward a reckoning the Whitlocks never saw coming. The evening air carried laughter and clinking glasses from Brent Whitlock's driveway. Music thumped from portable speakers as several patrol cars lined the curb. Elias watched from behind a thick oak tree 2 houses down, his dark hoodie helping him blend into the growing shadows. Brent stood at his grill, spatula in one hand, beer in the other. His booming voice carried clearly through the quiet street. "So, this guy starts mouthing off about his rights and all that garbage." He flipped a burger with exaggerated flair. "I explained things real simple. My street, my rules." 2 officers, Thompson and Rivera, according to their nameplates, roared with laughter. Karen floated between them in a floral sundress, refreshing drinks with practiced hospitality. Her smile never reached her eyes. "You should have seen how fast they backed down," Brent continued, pointing with his spatula. "Sometimes people need a reminder about who's really in charge around here." "Speaking of reminders," Thompson smirked, "how's that wedding couple doing? Heard they had some property damage issues." "Such a shame." Karen sighed dramatically, hand pressed to her chest. "But that's what happens when people don't respect the neighborhood." Elias pressed his back against the tree trunk, controlling his breathing. His concealed mic captured every word. Movement caught his eye. Officer Miguel Reyes, standing slightly apart from the group, made brief eye contact. His slight head shake was clear. "Don't get any closer." Inside their house, Naomi paced the living room, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, Mrs. Hill. I hear them too. Just keep your doors locked and stay away from the windows." "They're celebrating." Mrs. Hill's voice trembled with anger. "Celebrating what they did to you both, to your wedding day. Like it's some kind of victory party." "We expected this." Naomi kept her voice steady. "Let them think they've won. It makes them sloppy." Tires crunched on pavement outside. Another patrol car crawling past, spotlight sweeping across houses. 3rd pass in an hour. Naomi ducked away from the window. "Someone's at my door," Mrs. Hill whispered suddenly. "Don't answer it." "I'm calling Klein's team right now." "No, wait. It's Miguel Reyes. He's alone." Naomi tensed. "Be careful, Mrs. Hill, even if he seems sympathetic. Child, I've been reading people longer than you've been alive. Let me handle this." 40 minutes later, Elias's phone buzzed with coordinates. He found Miguel Reyes behind Jerry's all-night diner, closed for renovations. The young officer couldn't stop fidgeting, eyes darting between shadows. "I shouldn't be here," Miguel started, voice low. "If Brent finds out—" "But you are here." Elias kept his distance, letting Miguel set the pace. Why? The wedding footage. Body cams from all responding officers. It never made it to the system. Miguel wiped sweat from his forehead. Brent says there was an upload error, but I saw him in the equipment room that night. He knows how to edit the feeds, make gaps look like technical glitches. You have proof? Not exactly. But I know where he keeps his private files. Miguel glanced over his shoulder. Evidence Locker 47B. Thursday night, Martinez works the desk. He takes 2 smoke breaks, 20 minutes each, like clockwork. Miguel pressed a folded paper into Elias's hand. Shift schedules, door codes. I can't testify yet. My family, you understand? But I won't help them hurt people either. You're doing the right thing. Am I? Miguel's laugh was bitter. Feels like suicide by cop, just slower. He straightened his uniform. I was never here. Elias watched him disappear into the darkness, then photographed the paper before destroying it. The codes would be changed soon anyway. This was a one-time window. Back home, Naomi found a padded manila envelope on their doorstep. No postmark, no return address. She used gloves to open it, revealing an unmarked flash drive and a handwritten note. He edits. Miguel's been busy, Elias observed, setting up their secure laptop. Klein needs to see this immediately. They huddled together as Elias plugged in the drive. Video files populated the screen. Dozens of them, organized by date. Body cam footage, dashboard cameras, security feeds. But something was wrong. The timestamps jumped erratically. Audio cut in and out at convenient moments. Silent gaps appeared whenever Brent Whitlock escalated situations. He's not just deleting evidence, Naomi leaned closer. He's creating his own version of events. Look at this one. Elias clicked a file from their wedding day. The footage showed Naomi apparently shoving Karen, but the frames before and after were missing, editing out Karen throwing the wine. Another clip showed Elias resisting arrest, with the crucial moments of Brent's provocation conveniently absent. Each video told a carefully crafted lie of omission. He's been doing this for years. Naomi scrolled through dates. Traffic stops, domestic calls, protests, anything that might expose abuse of power, edited or erased. Outside, engines revved as Brent's party continued. Karen's laughter carried on the wind, sharp and victorious. They thought they were untouchable, protected by badges and doctored evidence. The laptop screen flickered with more tampered footage, each gap and silence another brick in the wall of corruption they were quietly dismantling. Piece by piece, the truth was coming together. Not in what the videos showed, but in what they tried to hide. The safe apartment was sparse, just a table, chairs, and a laptop. The flash drive's contents played in fragments on the screen while SAC Dana Klein leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Her blazer was crisp despite the late hour, badge glinting at her hip. "Stop there," she commanded, pointing at a frame from their wedding. "Now, play it at quarter speed." The footage showed Brent Whitlock approaching the ceremony, face twisted with contempt. Then, nothing. Static flickered, and the next clear image showed Elias already in handcuffs against the fence. 2 minutes and 14 seconds missing, Naomi noted, jotting in her notebook. Right when Brent shoved Mrs. Hill. Patterns consistent. Klein tapped keys, pulling up more files. Critical moments vanish. Clean edges on the cuts, not equipment failure. Someone knows the system inside out. Elias stood behind them, arms crossed. Miguel said Brent handles the uploads personally. Better than that. Klein's fingers flew across the keyboard, diving into metadata. Each edit traces to a specific login credential. Timestamps, access codes. It's all here if you know where to look. Can we prove it's Brent? Naomi asked. Not alone, but... Klein's phone buzzed. She checked the message, eyebrows rising. We might have help. Dispatcher wants to meet. Name? Elias straightened. Tessa Ward. Says she has documentation we need to see. Requesting neutral ground, St. Matthew's Church parking lot. I know her, Naomi said. She was on duty during our wedding. Sounded sympathetic when I called about the vandalism. 20 minutes later, they spotted Tessa Ward's slight figure under the parking lot's fluorescent lights. She wore civilian clothes, hands stuffed in her jacket pockets, constantly scanning the shadows. Thank you for coming. Klein approached slowly, hands visible. You're safe here. Am I? Tessa's laugh was brittle. You don't know what they do to people who talk. We can protect you. Elias kept his voice gentle. But we need to understand what you've seen. Tessa pulled a thick envelope from her bag, hands trembling. Call logs. 6 months' worth. Every time Karen Whitlock reported suspicious activity or threatening behavior. Every time Brent requested off-book dispatch support. Naomi flipped through the pages. Dozens of calls, all targeting specific houses, specific families. Notes in the margins highlighted patterns, response times, officer assignments, missing follow-ups. He has a system, Tessa explained, voice barely above a whisper. Calls that get priority, calls that disappear. Karen initiates. Then Brent. Headlights swept across them. A familiar police cruiser rolled past, deliberately slow. Brent Whitlock sat behind the wheel, face hidden in shadow. Tessa froze. Oh, God, he knows. Stay calm. Elias stepped between her and the street, angling his body to shield without reaching for his concealed weapon. Agent Klein? Moving now. Klein guided Tessa toward an unmarked SUV while speaking into her radio. Subject passing north on Cedar. Maintain distance. Full surveillance active. The cruiser circled the block. This time, Brent drove closer, spotlight blazing. He didn't need to speak. The message was clear. I see you. I know. He'll tell everyone. Tessa's voice cracked. The whole department will know I... Let them know. Klein's tone was steel. Every threat, every drive-by, every attempt at intimidation is being recorded. We have teams on every corner. He's not in control anymore. The cruiser made a third pass. This time, Brent killed his engine, sitting in darkness. Get in. Klein opened the SUV's door. We have a safe house ready. Ms. Ward, you've done the right thing. Now, let us do our jobs. Inside Klein's mobile command center, surveillance feeds tracked Brent's movements, while analysts processed Tessa's documents. Each page added weight to their case. Dates, times, badge numbers, all painting a picture of systematic abuse. Civil rights violations, Klein marked sections with sticky notes. Evidence tampering, obstruction, conspiracy, pattern of discriminatory enforcement. She pulled out her laptop, fingers flying. Enough for a federal warrant. Judge owes me a favor. We might get sign-off by morning. What about Karen? Naomi asked. These logs show she's integral to the harassment campaign. We add her. Criminal conspiracy, false reporting, witness intimidation. Klein's phone lit up. She answered, listening intently. Understood. Keep me posted. She turned to the others. Judge is reviewing now. Says it's solid but wants every I dotted. We stay tight, no mistakes. One wrong move, and Brent could still slip through on technical grounds. Tessa huddled in her chair, staring at her hands. Will my name be in the warrant? No, Klein assured her. You're a protected witness, but we'll need your testimony eventually. Are you ready for that? I have to be. Tessa straightened slightly. Someone has to say it out loud. What they do. What they've been doing for years. Outside, Brent's cruiser finally pulled away, but they all knew he wasn't gone. He was planning, probably calling in favors, trying to contain the damage. He didn't realize the damage was already done, documented in dispatch logs, preserved in metadata, witnessed by people who refused to stay silent. Klein's team continued monitoring frequencies while she refined the warrant language. Every detail had to be perfect. One loophole, one procedural error, and years of evidence could be thrown out. They'd come too far to fail on technicalities. The clock ticked past midnight. Klein's phone buzzed again with updates from the judge's chambers. They waited, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, Brent Whitlock waited too, still believing his badge made him untouchable, still certain the system would protect its own. The fluorescent lights of the safe apartment buzzed overhead as Naomi, Elias, and SAC Klein hunched over a blueprint of the police station. Coffee cups littered the table, evidence of their long night. Klein marked entry points with red dots while explaining the synchronized arrest plan. "Teams will move simultaneously," she said, tapping various locations. "We can't risk giving Brent time to react or destroy more evidence." Naomi's phone vibrated. "Message from Miguel," she announced, reading the text. "Brent's acting weird. Pulled files from records, looking over shoulder more than usual." "He's nervous," Elias observed. "Maybe he senses something's coming." Klein's phone rang, her posture straightening as she answered. "Klein here." She listened intently, her expression shifting from tension to carefully controlled relief. "Understood. Thank you, Your Honor." She ended the call and looked at them. "Warrants signed. Full scope. Evidence tampering, civil rights violations, conspiracy. Everything we asked for." Judge was thorough but convinced. The relief hit Naomi like a wave of fresh air. After weeks of documenting abuse, enduring threats, and watching Brent operate with impunity, they finally had legal authority to act. "Here's how we play it." Klein pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. "Naomi, you stay visible. Your normal routine becomes our bait. Let Karen see you. Let her report back to Brent. We need him focused on you while we position teams." Naomi nodded. "He'll expect me to run or hide. Seeing me in the open will make him cocky." "Exactly." Klein turned to Elias. "You're with the arrest team. You've seen his tactics, know his pressure points. I want you there when we take him." "What about Miguel?" Elias asked. "He's risked everything to help us." "Already arranged. He'll be pulled for a special assignment right before we move. Clean extraction, no blowback." Klein checked her watch. "Midnight. 6 hours until—" Multiple phones buzzed simultaneously. Emergency alerts flashed across screens. Naomi opened a local news link and felt her stomach drop. "Fire at the police station," she read aloud. "Evidence room, heavy smoke, emergency response ongoing." Klein swore viciously, already dialing numbers. "Get me eyes on sight. Now!" They crowded around Naomi's phone, watching live footage of smoke billowing from the police station's rear wing. Fire trucks wailed in the background as dark clouds stained the night sky. "This isn't random," Elias said quietly. "Look at the point of origin. Record storage, evidence lockup, everything we needed to corroborate Tessa's documents." Naomi refreshed her feed. "Wait, Brent just posted something." A new photo appeared. Brent Whitlock in full uniform, dramatically backlit by emergency lights, pretending to direct traffic away from the scene. His caption read, "Protecting our community even in crisis. Grateful to serve." Karen's comment appeared instantly. "My hero. Always there when we need you." "Son of a—" Klein slammed her palm on the table. "He knew. Someone warned him we were coming." The implications settled like ice in Naomi's chest. A leak meant someone with federal clearance or high-level local access had tipped Brent off. Someone who'd seen the warrant application or heard about the investigation. "Check your secure channels," Klein ordered, already working her phone. Who had access to the operation details? Which judges? Support staff? Elias pulled out his laptop. running activity logs now, but if they used burner phones or private emails… There, Naomi pointed at his screen. Security badge swipe at the records room 30 minutes before the fire. Officer ID matches Brent's partner. More alerts lit up their phones. The fire department declared the blaze contained, but the damage was extensive. Preliminary reports suggested water and smoke damage to multiple evidence storage areas. Klein paced, her usual composure cracking. Without those files, without physical evidence to back up testimonies… We still have digital copies, Elias reminded her. The edited body cam footage, dispatch logs, but no chain of custody documentation. No original files to authenticate against. Klein's expression hardened. They'll claim tampering, say we fabricated the copies. Outside, sirens continued wailing. Naomi walked to the window, watching the smoke cloud stain the horizon. Years of evidence, carefully preserved proof of corruption and abuse, reduced to ash because someone couldn't bear to see justice served. He's getting bolder, she said, not turning around. First the wedding, then the threats, now this. He burned the proof because he thinks he's untouchable. Not untouchable, Klein corrected grimly. Just protected. Question is, by whom? Elias joined Naomi at the window. Together they watched emergency lights flash across empty streets, while somewhere in the darkness, Brent Whitlock celebrated his latest victory, believing he'd destroyed the last threat to his power. The smoke hung like a shroud over their city, carrying away years of documented abuse in its dark coils. Naomi pressed her palm against the cool glass, remembering the wine stains on her wedding dress, the carved threats on their car, Mrs. Hill's trembling voice. He burned the proof, Naomi whispered, watching another fire truck scream past. Now he'll come for us. The safe apartment fell silent except for the distant sirens and Klein's rapid typing as she worked to salvage their operation. The warrant was signed, but their evidence was compromised. Their witness was hidden, but their security was breached. Every carefully laid plan now balanced on the edge of a knife, waiting to see which way justice would fall. Dawn crept over the suburban streets as Naomi walked to her car, keys gripped tightly. Every window, every shadow felt like watching eyes. She knew they were. Brent's allies keeping tabs, reporting her movements. Even now, a patrol car crawled past, the officer inside making no effort to hide his stare. From 3 houses down, Elias maintained his distance, pretending to check his mail while tracking his wife's movements. The red recording light on Mrs. Hill's porch camera blinked steadily, another set of eyes documenting whatever was about to unfold. Naomi reached her car just as a police cruiser screeched around the corner, blocking her driveway at an angle. The driver didn't exit immediately, letting tension build. Neighbors peeked through curtains, drawn by the commotion. "Help! Someone help me!" Karen Whitlock's voice shattered the morning quiet as she stumbled from between houses, holding her face. Dark bruises marked her cheek and temple, perfectly placed, theatrically fresh. Naomi stood very still, recognizing the trap but unable to escape it. Her training screamed to maintain composure, to let the performance play out while gathering details. "She attacked me!" Karen shrieked, pointing a shaking finger. "That woman assaulted me in my own yard! I have witnesses!" As if on cue, Brent's cruiser appeared, lights flashing. He stepped out with practiced authority, hand resting on his weapon. "Ma'am, don't move," he ordered Naomi, voice carrying for the growing audience of neighbors. "Officer, this is ridiculous," Naomi said evenly, hands visible. "I haven't been near her property." "That's a lie," Karen wailed, producing fresh tears. "She threatened me, said she'd make me pay for the wedding. Then she hit me." She pulled out her phone, showing photos of bruises that looked hours old, despite claiming a fresh attack. Brent approached Naomi with handcuffs ready. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Elias started forward instinctively, but caught himself. Breaking cover now would destroy months of work. Still, watching Brent roughly cuff his wife while Karen smirked behind her tears tested every ounce of his restraint. "You okay, honey?" Brent called to Karen, who nodded bravely for their audience. "Don't worry. I'll handle this troublemaker." As he guided Naomi toward the cruiser, Brent leaned close, whispering just for her and Elias to hear. "Try something, and I'll bury you both so deep they'll never find the bodies." Elias pulled out his phone, fingers shaking slightly as he dialed Klein. He watched Naomi disappear into the back of Brent's cruiser, maintaining eye contact until she was gone. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," Klein said when he explained. "But we have to play this by the book. One wrong move and they'll use it to discredit everything." "She's alone with him," Elias growled. "There are cameras in the car and station. He won't risk anything obvious right now. This is about intimidation, showing power." Klein's frustration was evident. "We need a judge to review our evidence, and—" A commotion drew Elias's attention to Mrs. Hill's house. 2 officers were conducting another welfare check, pounding on her door and shouting. Through the window, he saw the elderly woman clutch her chest, face contorted in pain. "Mrs. Hill!" He sprinted across lawns as she collapsed. The officers stepped back, radioing for medical response with no urgency. Elias reached her porch. "She needs help now. She has a heart condition." "Sir, step back," one officer warned. "This is a police matter." "I'm her medical contact," Elias insisted, kneeling beside Mrs. Hill's still form. Her pulse was rapid but present. "Call an ambulance." Finally, sirens approached. The EMTs worked efficiently, loading Mrs. Hill onto a stretcher, while Elias provided her medical history. As they drove away, his phone buzzed with a department notification. "Officer Brooks, effective immediately. Administrative suspension, pending investigation into interference with police duties and witness intimidation. Badge and weapon surrender required." Elias looked up to see Brent's partner watching from a patrol car, smiling coldly. The net was tightening. Naomi arrested, Mrs. Hill hospitalized, his position compromised. They were systematically cutting off support and credibility. He drove to the hospital, mind racing through contingencies. Mrs. Hill was stable but sedated. The nurses seemed wary of him, suggesting someone had already called to paint him as a threat. Meanwhile, at the station, Naomi sat in a holding cell, back straight, wedding ring catching fluorescent light. She catalogued every detail: camera positions, guard rotations, which officers avoided eye contact. Most importantly, she noted who laughed along with Brent as he passed her cell, building a map of corruption that would eventually bring them all down. Brent's laughter echoed down the hallway again, performatively loud. "Guess some people need to learn their place," he announced to his audience of sycophants. "Right, Mrs. Brooks." Naomi kept her expression neutral, but her mind was already moving ahead, analyzing angles and pressure points. They thought they were watching a cornered victim. They didn't realize they were watching a federal agent gathering evidence with every passing minute. The parking garage echoed with the steady drumbeat of rain, each drop hitting concrete like nature's own timer, counting down to something inevitable. Elias stood in the shadows between flickering fluorescent lights, watching SAC Dana Klein's unmarked sedan ease into a corner spot, headlights off. Klein stepped out, her dark suit blending with the dim surroundings. Her expression was tight, but held an edge of satisfaction that made Elias straighten. She carried a laptop bag close to her body, protecting it from the water dripping through the ceiling's cracks. "They think they won," Klein said without preamble, opening the trunk to reveal a mobile command setup. Brent's strutting around the station like a conquering hero. Karen's all over social media playing the victim. But they made a crucial mistake. "The evidence room fire," Elias said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. His ribs still ached where Brent had worked him over behind the store. "Exactly." Klein powered up a secure laptop. "They burned what they thought was our only copy. The file they destroyed was a decoy, carefully crafted to look complete, but missing key pieces. Standard protocol for corruption cases. We knew someone would try this." Images filled the screen. Crystal clear security footage from Mrs. Hill's porch camera showing the wedding confrontation, Karen's wine attack, Brent's arrival, the shoving. All of it automatically backed up to federal servers. "We have phone metadata tracking their movements during every incident," Klein continued, clicking through files. "The edited body cam footage Miguel leaked, plus the original versions he secretly archived. Complete dispatch logs from Tessa Ward, showing the pattern of harassment calls. Reyes's personal notes, documenting irregularities. And this." She hit play on an audio file. Karen's voice filled the garage. "I can make paperwork disappear." The threat was unmistakable, captured perfectly by Naomi's concealed microphone. "Everything synced to multiple secure locations the moment it was recorded," Klein explained. "Burning the local evidence room only proved consciousness of guilt. They gave us obstruction charges gift-wrapped." Elias leaned against a concrete pillar, processing. "But Naomi's still in their custody. They could—" "Not for long." Klein pulled out a federal court order. "We have a U.S. attorney standing by to supersede the local charges. The paperwork's already filed. In 1 hour, federal marshals will extract her legally, with full jurisdiction. Brent will fight it. Let him try. But that's not even the best part." Klein smiled grimly. "Remember Hank Mercer? The investigative journalist?" Elias had read his exposés on corruption cases. "We've been quietly feeding him verified documents for weeks. Photos, transcripts, financial records showing how deep this goes. The moment we move on arrests, his story drops nationally. Front page, major outlets, full documentation. The town won't be able to bury this one." Rain drummed harder overhead as Klein laid out surveillance photos showing Brent's pattern of intimidation, Karen's staged injuries, the network of officers who enabled it all. "We have them on civil rights violations, witness tampering, evidence destruction, conspiracy." Klein checked her phone as it buzzed. "That's the U.S. attorney. Extraction team is in position for Naomi." Elias's hands clenched. "I should be there. You need to make one call first." Klein handed him a burner phone. "Miguel Reyes. He's been helping quietly, but now he has to choose. Full federal protection or permanent silence. We move in 30 minutes either way." Elias dialed. The phone rang twice before Reyes answered, voice tense. "Officer Reyes." "Miguel, it's time to decide," Elias said quietly. "Federal protection program is ready. New identity, clean start, full immunity. Or you can stay quiet and pray Brent never discovers how much you helped us. Choose now." The line crackled with rain static. Elias could hear Reyes breathing, weighing years of career against conscience. "My family?" Reyes finally asked. "Full protection, immediate relocation, new jobs, schools, everything you need." Another pause. In the background, Elias heard the station's familiar bustle. "I watched them hurt people," Reyes said softly. "Good people. Mrs. Hill, your wife, others before you. I kept quiet too long. Last chance to make it right." "Yeah." Reyes took a deep breath. "I'm in. Tell me where to go." Klein was already texting an address to a safe house. Elias gave Reyes the details, then ended the call. "He'll testify?" "Full cooperation," Klein confirmed. "That's our last piece." She began typing rapidly on her secure phone, coordinating teams. Federal marshals are staging near the station. Arrest teams are in position at Brent's house, and 3 backup locations. Surveillance has Karen under observation. Media is standing by. Everything's ready. The rain's rhythm seemed to intensify, matching Elias's heartbeat as he thought of Naomi in that cell, waiting, trusting their plan. Klein finished her preparations and looked up at him. "Any last concerns before I give the green light?" Elias shook his head. "Just get my wife out safely. Then bury them." Klein nodded once, sharply. Her fingers moved across the phone's screen, composing a single word to multiple recipients. The message that would start an avalanche of justice. Her thumb hovered for a moment, then pressed send. On the screen, that simple command glowed like a promise. Go. The federal vehicles moved like shadows through pre-dawn streets, lights off, engines humming with restrained power. C. Dana Klein's sedan led the silent convoy toward the police station, where Naomi waited in a holding cell, a pawn in what Brent thought was his winning game. Inside the station, fluorescent lights buzzed as a U.S. Marshal approached the booking desk, federal paperwork in hand. The night sergeant's face fell as he read the superseding order, his eyes widening at the Department of Justice letterhead. Down the hall, keys jingled at Naomi's cell. Naomi emerged with perfect composure, back straight, eyes clear and focused. Her wedding ring caught the harsh lighting as she walked past the stunned officers, not sparing them a glance. Outside, she slid into Klein's waiting vehicle. "Ready?" Klein asked, checking her tactical radio. "Been ready since they poured wine on my dress," Naomi replied, her voice steady. Across town, unmarked vehicles surrounded the auto shop where Brent conducted his off-book business. Another team moved into position near the Whitlock residence. At exactly 5:45 a.m., Klein's voice crackled across secure channels. "All units, execute." The raids hit like synchronized lightning. Federal agents swarmed the auto shop's office, securing computers and files. At the station, teams sealed the evidence room and IT department. And at the Whitlock house, dark figures moved through the morning mist. Hank Mercer sat in his newspaper office, finger hovering over his keyboard. The moment Klein's text arrived, he published. His headline blazed across screens nationwide. Local officer linked to evidence, tampering, civil rights abuse. Federal investigation reveals pattern of corruption and racial harassment. The story spread like wildfire. Local news vans screeched around corners, racing toward the Whitlock residence. Helicopter rotors thumped overhead. Inside the house, Brent's phone exploded with alerts and warnings. Surveillance teams watched Brent burst from his bed, grabbing papers and a go-bag. He sprinted for the garage, Karen following in her robe, still not understanding. The garage door hummed open, revealing a wall of tactical vests and drawn weapons. Brent reversed course, shoving past Karen, heading for their fenced backyard. But as he rounded the house's corner, a familiar figure stepped from the shadows. Elias stood blocking the path, feet planted, hands loose at his sides. "Federal agent," Elias said calmly. "It's over, Brent." Brent's face contorted. The mask of authority crumbled, revealing raw panic beneath. He charged forward, throwing a wild haymaker that whistled past Elias's head. For the first time since their confrontation behind the store, Elias moved to fight back. But where Brent's attacks were desperate and sloppy, Elias's response was precision itself. He blocked a second punch, stepped inside Brent's guard, and executed a textbook hip throw. Brent hit the dewy grass hard. He thrashed, trying to regain his feet, but Elias smoothly trapped his arm in a control hold. No punches, no revenge, just calm, inexorable pressure. "Stop resisting," Elias said quietly. "You've done enough damage." Karen burst out the back door, phone already recording. Her designer robe fluttered as she screamed, "Get off him! I'm calling your supervisor! This is assault on an officer!" "Federal Bureau of Investigation." Klein's voice cut through the chaos as she stepped forward, gold badge gleaming. "Your husband is under arrest for multiple federal crimes, including civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy." Karen's phone slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers. The screen cracked on the patio stones, its camera still recording, as her face drained of color. The realization hit her like a physical blow. All her social media posts, all her fake victim claims, all her recorded threats. She'd been documenting her own crimes. More agents emerged from cover. Brent was officially cuffed. Miranda rights recited clearly for the gathering cameras. News helicopters circled overhead as neighbors stepped onto porches, watching karma unfold in their perfectly manicured cul-de-sac. Miguel Reyes arrived with U.S. Marshals, carrying boxes of evidence files he'd quietly preserved. Hank Mercer pushed through the growing media crowd, digital recorder extended. And from Klein's vehicle stepped Naomi, free and unbroken. She walked past the chaos with measured steps, her wedding ring catching the rising sun. Karen stood frozen on her back patio, mouth opening and closing soundlessly as her carefully constructed world imploded. Naomi paused beside her former tormentor. Her voice was soft but carried clearly in the morning air. "You picked the wrong couple." Local police cruisers arrived, their lights silent now, officers uncertain who still held authority. They found federal agents boxing evidence, logging Karen's social media posts, photographing the scene. Their thin blue line had been breached by a force they couldn't intimidate or ignore. Brent sat in the back of a federal transport vehicle, head bowed, as years of unchecked power dissolved around him. The neighbors who had ignored his abuse, enabled Karen's racism, and looked away from injustice now couldn't avoid witnessing consequences in high definition. Mrs. Hill watched from her porch across the street, supported by her daughter, hymnal clutched to her chest. Her security cameras, the ones that had helped build the federal case, recorded one final scene of justice being served in a neighborhood that had forgotten its meaning. The sun climbed higher as Elias joined Naomi near Klein's car. Together they watched federal agents lead Karen away in handcuffs, her desperate claims of victimhood fading into the morning air. Her perfect lawn, subject of so many HOA complaints against others, was trampled by evidence teams documenting every aspect of her fall. The fluorescent lights in the federal building's interrogation room cast harsh shadows across Karen Whitlock's face. Her designer blouse was wrinkled, her carefully maintained appearance cracking like her facade. Mascara trails marked her cheeks as she dabbed at her eyes with a crumpled tissue, treating it like a shield against reality. Secdana Klein sat across from her, manila folders arranged with military precision. Naomi Brooks stood near the door, arms crossed, while a sharp-eyed federal prosecutor adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. The room felt smaller by the minute. "Let's review the timeline, Mrs. Whitlock," Klein began, her tone clinical. She opened the first folder. "We'll start with the wedding day incident." Karen's fingers tightened on the tissue. "I was protecting my property values. Those people, those federal agents," the prosecutor corrected smoothly, "were legally celebrating their wedding." Klein laid out photographs. Karen bursting through the gate, wine bottle in hand, phone recording. "You deliberately disrupted a lawful gathering." Then, this. She placed another photo showing the moment Karen poured red wine down Naomi's dress. "I tripped," Karen sniffled, trying to summon tears. "It was an accident. They're making this racial when it's about neighborhood standards." Naomi stepped forward, placing a small recorder on the table. She pressed play. Karen's voice filled the room. "I can make paperwork disappear. That's what neighbors do. For the right neighbors. Karen's face flushed. That's out of context. You recorded me illegally. Federal investigation, the prosecutor reminded her. Every recording was authorized. Klein continued methodically through the evidence. Screenshots of Karen's social media campaign targeting the Brooks, time-stamped posts coordinating harassment, phone records showing her calls to Brent preceding each random police check. Then there's this, Klein added, sliding forward medical photos of Karen's self-inflicted bruises. Interesting makeup work. Professional theater experience? Karen's tears vanished. Rage flashed across her face. I was defending myself. They were aggressive, threatening. Ask anyone. We did, Naomi said quietly. She nodded to the prosecutor, who started a video. The screen showed security footage from multiple angles. The wedding disruption, Karen's deliberate wine attack, her pointing and laughing as Brent handcuffed Elias. The timestamp burned in the corner, destroying Karen's carefully constructed timeline. You orchestrated every incident, Klein stated. The harassment campaign, the false police reports, the coordinated intimidation of witnesses, and when federal investigation began, you helped coordinate the evidence room fire to cover it up. Karen's face contorted. She lunged across the table, manicured nails reaching for Naomi's face. Two agents materialized, restraining her with practiced efficiency. The tissue floated to the floor, forgotten. You tricked me, Karen shrieked, struggling against the agent's hold. You moved in here on purpose. You targeted us. No, Mrs. Whitlock, Klein replied, her voice arctic. You revealed yourself. Every action was your choice. Every crime was your decision. Through the interrogation room's window, they could see Brent being led down the hallway in handcuffs. His police uniform was gone, replaced by orange coveralls. News cameras flashed as federal marshals escorted him past a gauntlet of reporters, their questions overlapping. Officer Whitlock, did you coordinate the evidence destruction? Mrs. Whitlock, what about the falsified assault claims? Is this related to previous civil rights complaints? Brent's face was ashen, his usual swagger replaced by shuffling steps. The man who had terrorized the neighborhood with his badge now couldn't meet anyone's eyes. In her hospital room across town, Mrs. Hill watched the perp walk on TV. Her daughter held her hand as the news anchor detailed the charges. Civil rights violations, evidence tampering, conspiracy, witness intimidation. Lord, look at that, Mrs. Hill whispered, shaking her head. All that hatred, finally seeing daylight. Back in the interrogation room, Karen had collapsed into her chair, makeup completely ruined. The facade of the respectable suburban wife had crumbled, revealing the raw desperation beneath. Her fingers twisted together, ruby rings glinting under the harsh lights. I want a lawyer, she demanded, trying to sound imperious despite her smeared mascara. Of course, the prosecutor agreed. You'll need one. He began listing charges. Obstruction of justice, filing false police reports, conspiracy to tamper with evidence, witness intimidation, civil rights violations. Each charge landed like a hammer blow. Karen's shoulders hunched further with each one. The power she had wielded so casually, social pressure, her husband's badge, the threat of calling the authorities, had evaporated. Two female agents stepped forward to escort her to booking. Karen stood on shaking legs, designer heels wobbling. The walk to processing stretched endless, past offices where federal employees paused to watch her pass. No one offered sympathy. No one looked away. Her fingerprints were taken, pressing each manicured finger into the scanner. The booking photo captured her tear-streaked face and smeared makeup for federal records. Her jewelry was logged and bagged, including the diamond-studded wedding ring she had so often flashed while making threats. The cell door closed with a heavy finality. Karen stood in the concrete room, arms wrapped around herself, as the enormity of consequences finally settled over her. The sound of the lock engaging echoed like punctuation on the end of her reign of neighborhood terror. Through the small window in her cell door, she could see Naomi and Elias conferring with Klein in the hallway. Their faces showed no triumph, no gloating, only the patient satisfaction of justice properly served. 3 weeks after Karen Whitlock's arrest, federal court documents landed on desks across town like autumn leaves. Each filing revealed deeper rot, edited body cam footage, manipulated dispatch logs, buried complaints stretching back years. The police department's wall of silence crumbled under the weight of undeniable evidence. Hank Mercer's latest exposé filled the front page. Federal investigation reveals systematic abuse of power. His meticulous reporting laid bare the pattern. How Officer Brent Whitlock had weaponized his badge, how Karen had orchestrated social pressure campaigns, how complaints disappeared into administrative black holes. At the community center, Mrs. Hill sat carefully in a folding chair, still moving gingerly from her hospital stay. The town hall meeting was packed. Faces she'd known for decades now wearing expressions of shame and recognition. "We're implementing immediate oversight measures," the interim police chief announced, his collar damp with sweat. "Federal authorities will review all procedures, training, and complaint processes." Mrs. Hill raised her hand, voice steady. "And what about those who saw and said nothing?" The silence that followed spoke volumes. Officer Miguel Reyes watched the meeting via secure video feed from his safe location. Federal protective custody felt strange, but he'd chosen truth over silence. His testimony about evidence tampering had helped break the case wide open. Now, he waited to learn if he'd ever wear a badge again, and if he even wanted to. In the courthouse, Brent Whitlock's defense strategy collapsed like a house of cards. His lawyer tried claiming edited body cam footage was technical malfunction, but federal prosecutors methodically demonstrated intentional tampering. They showed timestamps, log-in records, and system alterations that matched Tessa Ward's preserved dispatch logs. The defendant systematically abused his authority, the prosecutor explained, displaying a timeline of incidents. Each edit, each lost complaint, each instance of harassment was deliberate and coordinated. Karen's separate trial fared no better. Her attempts to play victim withered under the evidence. Security footage showed her wine attack at the wedding. Audio captured her threats. Metadata proved she'd coordinated online harassment campaigns. Her own social media posts revealed the calculated nature of her actions. When Naomi took the stand for her victim impact statement, she wore the wine-stained wedding dress. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Her voice remained measured, professional, the tone of someone who refused to be diminished. "This case isn't about revenge," she testified. "It's about accountability. Officer Whitlock and Mrs. Whitlock didn't just attack two people at a wedding. They revealed how power can be corrupted when we look away. They showed what happens when we pretend not to see." Elias's testimony about the beating behind the store carried devastating weight because of its simplicity. He described each punch without embellishment, letting the facts speak. When asked why he hadn't fought back, his answer silenced the courtroom. Because some fights aren't won with fists. They're won by letting truth have its day in court. The sentencing came down like thunder. The judge, a veteran of civil rights cases, spoke with controlled fury. Brent received 15 years in federal prison for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, and conspiracy. His police certification was permanently revoked. Karen got 8 years for obstruction of justice, false reporting, and witness intimidation. Civil suits followed like aftershocks. Their insurance company reviewed the evidence and refused coverage, citing intentional criminal acts. The Whitlocks' assets were seized to pay damages. Their carefully curated suburban life crumbled under the weight of consequences. The police chief's resignation letter hit the media next. Hank Mercer's coverage included quotes from internal sources describing a department-wide house cleaning. Federal oversight teams arrived, reviewing policies and procedures, installing new accountability measures. Mrs. Hill's return home became an unexpected turning point for the neighborhood. The same people who had looked away now brought food and flowers. Some apologized directly. Others simply sat with her on the porch, finally listening to decades of stories they'd ignored. "Change comes slow," she told them, "but it comes if we make it." Tessa Ward returned to dispatch under new management, her careful documentation now a model for proper record-keeping. Miguel Reyes considered offers from several reform-minded departments, weighing his options thoughtfully. The federal investigation expanded outward like ripples in a pond, examining similar patterns in neighboring jurisdictions. Other officers' records faced fresh scrutiny. Other complaints resurfaced from administrative burial grounds. Naomi checked her mailbox one morning to find an official letter. Inside was a commendation for her role in exposing systemic abuse, along with notice of promotion within the Bureau's Civil Rights Division. The system could work, the letter seemed to say, when people refused to back down. The neighborhood changed too. New policies required regular audits of police interactions. Civilian oversight boards gained real power. Community meetings addressed uncomfortable truths about bias and privilege. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, earned one difficult step at a time. Local news covered the installation of federal monitors at the police department. Cameras captured boxes of files being reviewed, new training programs being implemented, and oversight mechanisms taking shape. The story that had begun with wine stains on a wedding dress had transformed into something larger, a testament to patience, documentation, and the power of refusing to accept injustice. Sunlight streamed through the community hall windows, catching the crystal decorations and sending rainbow patterns dancing across the walls. The space had been transformed from its usual municipal plainness into something magical. White fabric draped the ceiling beams, and fairy lights twinkled even in daylight. Mason jars filled with wildflowers lined every surface, their simple beauty a testament to rebirth. Naomi stood before a full-length mirror, smoothing her hands over the ivory fabric of her wedding dress. The red wine stain remained visible, a badge of honor she'd refused to remove. The mark traced down the bodice like a map of everything they'd overcome. Her reflection showed not a victim, but a warrior who had turned evidence into ammunition and patience into power. "You ready, baby?" Mrs. Hill's voice carried from the doorway. She looked radiant, recovered from her hospital stay, wearing a deep purple dress and carrying a worn Bible. Her eyes sparkled with unshed tears as she took in Naomi's appearance. "More than ready," Naomi replied, touching the wine stain deliberately. "This time, we finish what we started." The main hall filled steadily. Familiar faces from the neighborhood took seats, people who had watched in silence months ago, now here to witness something better. Miguel Reyes slipped in quietly, choosing a seat near the back. He'd transferred to a reforming department 2 towns over, wearing his badge with new purpose. Tessa Ward sat prominently in the front row, no longer hiding in shadows. Her straight spine and lifted chin showed how freedom from fear could transform a person. Stacey Dana Klein made a brief appearance, dressed in civilian clothes rather than her usual federal attire. She hugged Naomi quickly, whispered something that made both women laugh, then stepped back toward the exit. This wasn't about badges or investigations anymore. This was about healing. The music shifted. Not a traditional wedding march, but a gospel song about triumph. Heads turned as Elias appeared at the back, looking sharp in his suit. His eyes locked onto Naomi's, and their shared smile carried the weight of everything they'd survived together. Mrs. Hill took her place at the front, opening her Bible with practiced grace. Her voice, once shaken by fear and illness, rang out clear and strong. We gather today not just for a wedding, but for a resurrection. What hatred tried to destroy, love rebuilt stronger. Naomi and Elias stood before her, hands clasped. The wine-stained dress caught the light, its mark now looking less like damage and more like a battle scar worn proudly. These vows, Naomi began, her voice carrying to every corner, aren't just promises between us. They're declarations to the world. I vow to stand firm when injustice comes, to document truth when lies try to bury it, to love you not just in peace, but in resistance. Elias's response came steady and sure. I vow to match your strength with mine, to never back down from what's right. We don't shrink, not from threats, not from fear, not from the long road of changing what's broken. Where you stand, I stand. What you face, we face together. Mrs. Hill's amen echoed through the hall like thunder, and others joined in, the sound swelling into something powerful. Across town, Karen's pristine suburban house stood empty, its windows dark. A bright orange foreclosure notice marred the perfect front door. The carefully tended flowers were withering, the grass growing long, a visible reminder that actions have consequences. In a prison visiting room, Brent Whitlock sat alone, staring at a mounted TV playing news footage of his own arrest. His face had grown gaunt, his expression hollow as he watched himself being led away in handcuffs. The uniform he'd once weaponized, replaced by prison orange, a color that wouldn't fade for 15 years. Back at the community hall, the celebration moved into full swing. The same neighbors who had once looked away now lined up to congratulate the couple. Their handshakes and hugs carried the weight of apology, of lessons learned, of community rebuilt on better foundations. I should have spoken up that first day, one elderly resident told Naomi, gripping her hands. Never again will I stay quiet. A young mother approached with her teenage daughter. You taught us what real strength looks like. Thank you for not giving up. The band struck up a slow song as Naomi and Elias took the dance floor. Her wine-stained dress swirled as he spun her, the mark catching light like a banner of defiance. Other couples joined them, including Miguel Reyes dancing with Tessa Ward, two people who had chosen courage over comfort. Mrs. Hill watched from her seat of honor, dabbing her eyes but smiling broadly. She'd seen decades of injustice in her lifetime, but also this: love refusing to be defeated, truth refusing to stay buried, community refusing to remain broken. The string lights twinkled overhead as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Someone started the chant, soft at first, then growing. Love won! Love won! Love won! The words filled the space, and this time they rang true. Not because hatred had disappeared, but because they had faced it together and emerged stronger. Not because the system was perfect, but because they had proven it could be made to work when enough people demanded justice. Naomi and Elias held each other close as they danced, the wine stain between them like a medal of honor. Their struggle had transformed not just their lives, but their entire community. The proof was all around them, in the mixed crowd dancing together, in the reformed policies at the police department, in the new voices speaking up at community meetings, in the bonds forged through shared resistance to injustice. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel, and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked 2 special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day.